Ohai. China, the state in East Asia, takes the third place in the world across the territory. 9,598,962 square km, conceding to Russia and Canada, and on population -1,415,515,674 inhabitants, the first. Most of the population, ethnic Chinese, the self-named Han. People's Republic of China, according to the Constitution, the socialist state, is the great power, the potential superstate, the economic superstate, the permanent member of the UN Security Council. One of the leading spacefaring nations of the world, has nuclear weapon and the world's largest army on the number of the military personnel. The Chinese economy is the second economy of the world on nominal VVV and the first economy of the world on DDD. PPS. The People's Republic of China is the world leader in production of the majority of types of industrial output. The largest world exporter. Factory of the world. And one of the main sales markets. Has the gold and foreign exchange reserves, greatest in the world. In 2019 I took the second place after the USA on expenses on research and development. $526 billion, $658 billion USA. In 2021 I rose to the 12th place in the Global Innovative Index. The delta of the Pearl River surpassed Silicon Valley in the rating of scientific and technical clusters. China consists in such international organizations as the Union, AIDS, G, FTO, SCO, BRICS. Since declaration of People's Republic of China in 1949, ruling party is the Communist Party of China, CPP. The Chinese president is Xi Jinping. Since 2013. China is located in East Asia. From the east it is washed by waters of the western seas of the Pacific Ocean. In the northeast China borders on the DDR and Russia, in the north, on Mongolia, in the northwest, on Russia and Kazakhstan, in the west, on Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Afghanistan, in the southwest, on controlled Pakistan, Gilgit-Baltistan, India, Nepal and Bhutan, in the south, on Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam. The area of the territory of China is 9.6 million km. China is the second in area country in Asia. After Russia, the fourth in area country in the world, conceding only to Russia, Canada and the USA. Depending on the use technique, the area of the USA can both exceed the area of China and to concede to her. The Uniform Chinese Time Zone, UTS+8. The seacoast of China was stretched from border with North Korea to border with Vietnam in the south in the north and has length of 14.5 thousand km. China is washed yellow, East Chinese and Southern Chinese by the seas. The island of Taiwan is separated from the continent by the Taiwan Strait. Country extent from the west on the east. From Pamir to Shanghai. About 5,000 km from the north on the south. From Amur River on border with Russia to the southernmost tip of the island of Hainan. About 4.1 thousand km. The topography of China is very different. In his territory there are high mountains, the plateau, hollows, deserts and extensive plains. More than 2/3 countries are occupied by ridges, uplands and the plateau, deserts and semi-deserts. Usually allocate 3 large orographical regions. The plateau of Tibet, more than 2,000 m high, is above sea level, located in the southwest of the country. The belt of mountains and the high plains has height of 200 m, is in a northern part. Low accumulative plains below 200 m high and low mountains in the northeast, the east and the south of the country where lives she part of the population of China. The Great Chinese Plain, the valley of the Huanghe River and the delta of Yangtze unite near the seacoast, stretching from Beijing to Shanghai in the south and the north. The basin of the Pearl River and her main inflow Xi River is located in the southern part of China and separated from a river basin of Yangtze by mountains Nanling and the ridge Yuashan, which is included in the World Heritage List in China. In the direction from the west on the east, the Chinese relief forms 3 steps. The first of them, the plateau of Tibet, where height more than 4,000 meters above sea level prevail. The following step is formed by the mountains of Sichuan and central China, which height from 1,500 to 3,000 m. Here vegetation sharply changes. At rather small distances there is a change of natural zones from mountain cold deserts to the subtropical forest. As the last step serve the fertile plains occupying heights 1,500 m above sea level or lower. The climate of China is very different, from subtropical in the southeast to sharply continental, arid in the northwest. On the southern coast, weather is defined by monsoons which arise because of various absorptive properties of sushi and ocean. Seasonal movements of air and the accompanying winds contain a large amount of moisture during the summer period and quite dry in the winter. Approach and withdrawal of monsoons to a large extent determine quantity and distribution of rainfall by the country. Huge differences on the width, longitude and height in the territory of China generate a big variety of the temperature and meteorological conditions, in spite of the fact that the most part of the country lies in the area of a temperate climate. More than 2/3 countries are occupied by ridges, uplands and the plateau, deserts and semi-deserts. About 90% of the population live for only 10% of the area of the country, in coastal areas and floodplains of the big rivers, such as Yangtze, Huanghe, Yellow River, and Zhujiang. These territories are in serious ecological condition as a result of long and intensive agricultural processing and industrial environmental pollution. The most northern province of China, Heilongjiang, is an area of a temperate climate similar to climate of Vladivostok and Khabarovsk, and the southern island of Hainan in tropics. The difference of temperatures between these regions in winter months is big, but in the summer the distinction decreases. In a northern part of Heilongjiang, temperature can fall in the winter to 38 C, average temperatures of January near 16 C. Average temperature of July in this area is 20 C. In the southern parts of the province of Guangdong, average temperature fluctuates from 10 C in January up to 28 C in July. The amount of precipitation changes even more than temperature. On the southern slopes of mountains kindlings numerous rains which at most it is the share of summer monsoons drop out. At the movement to the north and the west from mountains, the probability of rains decreases. Northwest regions of the country, the driest in the deserts. Taklamakan, Gobi, Ordos. Of rainfall located there are practically not present. The southern and east areas of China often, about 5 times a year, suffer from destructive typhoons and also from floods, monsoons, a tsunami and droughts. The northern regions of China cover every spring yellow dust storms which arise in northern deserts and are transferred by winds towards Korea and Japan. China is rich with various types of fuel and raw material mineral resources. Reserves of oil, coal, metal ores and drags are of especially great importance. Metals. China has deposits of many minerals. The main source of energy in China is coal, on which reserves China concedes to the few countries, and on production wins first place in the world, minus 3561 million tons in 2013. Fields are concentrated mainly in northern China. Large resources are available also in northwest China. Poorer in coal other areas, especially southern. The most part of deposits is presented by coal. Coal fields are generally located in northern and northeast China. The largest reserves of coal are concentrated in the province of Shanxi. 30% of total amount of stocks. The Datong and Yansuansky coal mines. China also wins first place in the world as the importer of coal. Minus 320 million tons are imported into the People's Republic of China in 2013. Other important source of energy resources is oil. On oil reserves, China possesses the noticeable place among the countries Central, East and Southeast Asia. Oil fields are found in various areas, but they are most considerable in northeast China. Plain of Songhuanani. Coastal territories and shelf of northern China, and also in some internal areas, the Dungarian Hollow, Sichuan. China is the world's largest producer of coal since 2007. In 2013, gold mining volume in China increased by 6.23% in comparison with 2012 and was 428 tons. The Chinese companies continue to develop actively mines as in the country and abroad. Also in the country, deposits of slate from which it is possible to extract slate gas are very big. In 2015, China plans to extract 6.5 billion cubic meters of slate gas. The total production of natural gas in the country will grow by 6% from the current level. By 2020, it plans to reach production level in the range from 60 billion to 100 billion cubic meters of slate gas annually. In China, a set of the rivers which total length is km. Over 100 of them bear the waters collected from the area more than 100 km. Everyone. The rivers of China form internal and external systems. The external rivers are the Yangtze, Huanghe, Heilongjiang, Amur, Zhujiang, Linkangyang, Meikeng, Nujiang and Yalutsampo, having an exit to quiet Indian and Arctic Oceans. Their total catchment area covers about 64% of the territory of the country. The internal rivers, which number is small, are considerably removed from each other and on the majority of sites shoaled. They flow into lakes of internal areas or are lost in deserts or salty bogs. Their catchment area covers about 36% of the territory of the country. In China there are a lot of lakes. The total area which they occupy is about km. There are also thousands of artificial lakes, reservoirs. Lakes in China can be divided into external and internal too. Mainly rich aquaproductum freshwater lakes, such as Poyinghu, Dongtinghu and Taihu belong to external. Salt lakes, the biggest of which, the Lake Qinghai, belong to internal. Among lakes of internal areas there is a lot of Lobnor which dried, for example, and Juan. In China more than 500 species of a bamboo making 3% of all woods of the country grow. The bamboo thickets which are found in 18 provinces, not only the habitat of many animals, but also a source of valuable raw materials. Their lignified culms, stalks, are widely used in the industry. The fauna of China is very diverse. On quantities of species of wild animals, China is high on the list in the world. Here about 6,300 species of vertebrata live and 3,862 species of fishes are about 10% of all types existing on Earth. Here the big panda, a golden monkey, the South Chinese tiger, brown chicken, a Mancunian crane, a red-legged ibis, a white dolphin, the Chinese alligator and other most rare representatives of terrestrial fauna are found. The history of China differs in a variety of written sources which, in combination with archaeological data, allow to reconstruct political life and social processes since an extreme antiquity. The canonized ancient Chinese texts of religious and philosophical and historical contents, especially those from them in which Confucius's doctrine was stated, in turn influenced further development of the Chinese civilization, outlook of the Chinese people. The socio-political activity of each person directed to achievement of happiness and well-being in mortal life was characteristic of the Chinese civilization since the time of Confucius. At the same time, the destiny depended not on divine predetermination, and on own efforts. The Chinese civilization, one of the oldest in the world. According to the statements of the Chinese scientists, such as Liu Bengzhen and Xiu Fenma, her age can be 5,000 years. At the same time, the available written sources cover the period not less than 3,500 years. Old existence of the administrative management systems which were improved by the dynasties replacing each other created obvious advantages to the Chinese state, which economy was based on the developed agriculture in comparison with more backward neighbors, nomads and mountaineers. Even more introduction of Confucianism as the state ideology. The 1st century BB and the uniform system of the letter. The 2nd century BB strengthened the Chinese civilization. From the political point of view, China within several millennia passed through cyclically repeating periods of political unity and disintegration, and in some cases partially or completely became a part of the foreign states. For example, the empires of Yuan and Qing. The territory of China was regularly exposed to invasions from the outside. However, most of aggressors were exposed to Sinification sooner or later and assimilated in the Chinese ethnos, and territories of their states usually joined in the territory of China. The modern Chinese state and society is a result of the centuries-old cultural and political interpenetration and interaction with the numerous surrounding Asian people, which was followed by movements of multi-million human masses in centuries-old Hansky assimilation.
At the same time, it is necessary to consider that the traditional Chinese historiography includes the sovereign states of other people,
Mongols, Manchurians, etc. In a chronicle dynasty knew you the history of China, ignoring own historical traditions of these people and considering their states as historical parts of China. Fucking Chinese War 1894-1895. The short chronological table accepted in the Chinese historical science. B.C. 2353 BB-2255 BB.
Legendary Governor Ya.
2255 BB-2205 BB.
Legendary Governor Shan.
2205 BB-1766 BB. Legendary Xia Dynasty. 1766 BB-1122 BB. Traditional dates of a dynasty Shangyan. 1122 BB-249 BB. Traditional dates of the Zhou dynasty. 221 BB-206 BB. Traditional dates of a dynasty Qin, actually creation of the Chinese national state. 206 year BB-220 AD. Traditional dates of the Han dynasty, including the Western Han with 206 BB on 25 AD. East Han -25, 220 AD. Era 220, 264 Dynasty Wei, Fruitzerstfisera. 265, 420 Jin Dynasty. Western Jin. 265, 316 East Jin. 317, 420. 420, 479 Dynasty Southern Song. 479, 501 Keys Dynasty. 502, 556 Dynasty Liang. 557, 588 Dynasty Chen. 581, 618 Sui Dynasty. 618, 917 Tang Dynasty, Golden Age of the Chinese Culture. 907, 959 Era of 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms. 960, 1279 Song Dynasty, Raising of Economic Life. Exclusively high for the Middle Ages. 1280, 1368 Yuan Dynasty. Mongolian. 1368, 1644 Ming Dynasty. 1644, 1911 Qing Dynasty. Manchurian. 1912, 1949. On Taiwan, on a crust. BB. Republic of China. Since October 1, 1949 People's Republic of China. Qing Dynasty. Originally the dynasty was called Qin. Gold. On the Empire of Qin, the former state Churkcheni from which Manchurians brought themselves. In 1636 the name was changed to Qing. Clean. In the first half of the 18th century the Tsinsky government managed to adjust effective management of the country, one of results of what was the fact that in this century the fastest growth rates of population were observed in China.
The Tsinsky government pursued self-isolation policy that eventually led to the fact that in the 19th century, being a part of the Empire of Qing China, it was violently opened by the Western powers. The subsequent cooperation with the Western powers allowed a dynasty to avoid crash during the revolt Tepanov, to carry out rather successful modernization and thus to exist before the beginning of the 20th century. However, it caused the growing anti-Manchurian moods.
In May 1900 in China the Kuansky Revolt began. On June 21, 1900 the Empress Cixi declared war of Great Britain, Germany, Austria-Hungary, France, Italy, Japan, the USA and Russia. Great powers agreed about joint actions against Risen. The revolt was suppressed.
On February 8, 1904 the Russian-Japanese war for control over Manchuria and Korea began.
The war going on territories of China was unsuccessful for Russia. By her results Russia was forced to cede to Japan Port Arthur and the Liaodong Peninsula with a part of Kiev constructed by then. On November 14, 1908 the Emperor Guangxu, whom Cixi stripped of power earlier, died. Guangxu was poisoned as Cixi didn't want that he endured her. Next day also Cixi died. To a throne there ascended Puan, which was 2 years old. His father Prince Chun was appointed the regent.
In 1911 in China the Achansky Revolt, which became the beginning of Sinkiski Revolution.
1911-1913 is a result of which was began the Manchurian dynasty is overthrown. The Empire of Qing collapsed and creation of the Republic of China was proclaimed. After falling of the monarchy, Bogdohan of Mongolia refused to obey the Republic and declared that his country recognized sovereignty of a Manchurian dynasty, but not the Republic of China. On November 3, 1912 the Agreement of Mongolia with Russia was concluded. England used internal fight in China for strengthening of the influence in Tibet. Tibet was stirred to national liberation action and forced the Chinese garrison to leave the country. Since then up to occupation by China, Tibet remained the independent state. Russia agreed to consider Tibet the English sphere of influence, and England recognized the Russian interests in independent. External. Mongolia. On February 12, 1912 Pu also abdicated. The General Yuan Shiqi, the Prime Minister and the Commander-in-Chief of Army, came to the power. Soon he was proclaimed by the President of China. In 1913 there was the Second Revolution, under Sun Yat-sen's leadership. Yuan Shiqi suppressed separate performances in the central and southern provinces. In the country military dictatorship, Yuan Shikai, the founder of Group of Biansky. Northern militarists is established. Sun Yat-sen was forced to emigrate abroad. After the beginning of World War I, the Chinese government announces the neutrality and asks warring powers not to move military operations to the territory of China, including on the Chinese lands rented by powers. However, on August 22, 1914, Japan announced the state of war with Germany and landed 30,000 army to the north of Qingdao, the center of the German colony in the province of Shandong. After the 2-month military campaign, Japan took the German possession in Shandong and also extended the control to all territory of the province. In 1915, the Chinese princes voted for establishment in China of the monarchy with Yuan Shikai on an imperial throne. The parliament is dismissed. Appears about creation of the Chinese Empire. It causes a number of revolts in the provinces of China. Independence of Beijing is announced by the provinces of Yunnan, Guizhou and Guangxi. then Guangdong, Zhejiang, Sichuan and Hunan separate. On March 22, 1916 the republic was restored. Yuan Shikai was forced to refuse a title.
After that, Yuan Shikai and China, numerous military and feudal fiefdoms of various militaristic groups began to be made up.
The Bryansky group, which broke up subsequently to Fandiansky, headed by the former leader of Gang of Hanku Zhang Solonim, Chilisky headed by the general Fan Guohangan and Hui headed by the general Duane Kishiam, was the largest. Under control of Fantiansky group there were provinces of Heilongjiang, Jiren and Fengtian, under control of Chilisky, Shandong, Jiangsu, Zhejiang, Fujian, Jiangti, Hunan, Hubei and Chelis part. Fantianskian and Hui cliques were financed by Japan, Chilisky, England and the USA. Li Yuanhong was a protege of Southwest militarists. The Vice President General Feng Guohang was guided by England and the USA, and the Prime Minister General Duane Kirui stuck to the pro-Japanese direction. In 1917 Japan began to grant Duane Kirui large loans, receiving for them everything new and new concessions, including concessions in Manchuria. The Kuomintang Party was created in 1912 in the province of Guangzhou. Almost in 10 years, in 1921, also the Communist Party of China, small and not enjoying during this period special popularity, was created. On January 20, 1924 there takes place the All-China Congress of Kuomintang in Guangzhou. At a congress the course on the union with the Chinese Communists and the USSR was accepted. On June 16 the military academy Whampoa under the leadership of Chiang Kai-shek is founded. In the first set it was enlisted 400, in the second -500, in the third -800 and the fourth about 2600 listeners. To Whampoa Academy there arrived the big group of the Soviet military advisors. In October 1924 the Constitution of China was adopted, the parliament consisting of the Senate elected by local governments for a period of 6 years, and the chambers of deputies, elected by the people for a period of 3 years, the head of state the president elected by parliament for a period of 5 years, executive body the office
consisting of the Prime Minister and the Minister appointed by the President with the consent of the Chamber of Deputies, the highest judicial authority, the Supreme Court which chairman was appointed with the consent of the Senate, representative bodies of local government, the meetings elected by the population. Executive local governments, the administrative councils elected by the population for a period of 4 years became legislature.
In March 1926 Chiang Kai-shek committed a military coup in the canton, expelled from the city of communists, and 3 months later was elected the chairman of Kuomintang and the commander-in-chief of the armed troops. Having achieved the higher authority, Chiang Kai-shek invited the German advisors headed by the former general of a Reichsreserve sect.
In 1926 the National and Revolutionary Army of China of Chiang Kai-shek undertook a so-called Northern Campaign.
Within 6 months of continuous fights the central regions of China were freed from the power of local military governors.
At the beginning of 1927 Chiang Kai-shek went to open the disorder of a united front of Jiangmen and P8.
His troops began disarmament of the Shanghai groups and teams, Massachusetts arrests and executions of trade union figures and communists began.
In response to it, communists organized on August 1 in the city of Nanchang the revolt of a part of Kuomintang groups which became history of China as the Nanchang Revolt.
In December 1927 the communistic rebellion in the canton which Gumindanovich suppressed after 4 days of bloody fights was excited.
After several military operations by 1927 troops of Kuomintang controlled the most part of the territory of China. In 1928 the leader of Fantyansky clique Zhang Zuolin ceded Beijing to allies of Kuomintang and died during the incident in Manchuria.
The same year Chiang Kai-shek became the President of the Republic of China and gained the international recognition from the USA and Great Britain. In the fall of 1931 Japan attacked China.
On September 18, after a series of provocations, Japanese took the offensive, having for a short time occupied all Manchuria. In March 1932 the state of Manchukuo, which was headed by Tuan, the last emperor of the Manchurian Empire of Qing overthrown in days of Sinkhiski Revolution, was proclaimed here.
In these difficult conditions of Chiang Kai-shek it was forced to fight along with 3 enemies.
External Japanese aggression, sporadic revolts of certain militarists on places, and the armed forces of the CPP applying for seizure of power in the country.
He chose policy of a compromise with Japanese. With militarists ran business depending on specific circumstances. With communists any compromise was impossible. In 1934 the main forces of the CPP were blocked in the province of Jiangxi.
In these difficult conditions the management of the CPP managed to organize break, and after the months-long march brought troops on the northwest of the country into so-called special area, with the center in the city of Yan'an.
These events became history of the CPP as a great campaign.
Chiang Kai-shek planned to continue fight against communists and there, but a number of his generals, considering more priority task reconciliation with communists and joint fight against the Japanese aggression, rebelled here.
As a result of the Xi'an incident, the agreement on creation of a united front between the CPP and Kuomintang was signed. Chiang Kai-shek's government at the time of the Weimar Republic received military aid from Germany. With coming to power of Hitler the help was increased for fight against communists. In China the plants on production of the licensed German arms were created, the German advisors provided training of staff, helmets, the Gura 88 and 98 rifles, the Mauser guns were exported to China. China also received a small amount of the Henschel, Junkers, Heinkel and Messerschmitt planes, howitzers of Rheinmetall and Krupp, anti-tank and mountain tools, for example, of Pak 35/36, also the PFY light tanks were delivered. On November 25, 1936 Japan and Germany signed the Anti-Kuomintang Pact directed against the USSR and the communistic movement. On December 12, 1936 the Xi'an incident which forced Chiang Kai-shek took place to unite with communists. On July 7, 1937 at Luguqiao Bridge near Beijing, big war between Japan and China began the conflict. From this point, according to the Chinese historians, World War II begins.
On August 21, 1937 the Soviet-Chinese Non-Aggression Pact and the USSR began to render the military and economic aid to Chiang Kai-shek's government was signed. To China it was delivered the I-16 planes and other military equipment. At first on side of China the Soviet pilots were at war.
The German military aid to China was stopped. The head of the government of the People's Republic of China. 1949-1976.
Zhu Enlai, his wife Deng Yingke, and
at the left. and adopted by them put Vaishya, fallen a victim of the Cultural Revolution. 1949. By 1949, armed forces of the CPP won a victory in the civil war in China, and some researchers consider that the Kuomintang could protect the power independently, without the aid of the USA, whereas the Communist Party of China of the opportunities for the armed seizure of power had known lead on the Soviet Union. At the same time, it is known that the USA rendered huge military aid to Kuomintang, including deliveries of very large number of tanks. In September 1949, there began work the National Political Advisory Board of China, which proclaimed People's Republic of China, elected the Central National Government Office as permanent body of NCS. Mao Zedong became the chairman of CENS and created the State Administrative Council as the supreme executive body. Zhou Enlai became the chairman of State Automated System. In 1954, the Constitution, which renamed the Central National Government Office into the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, the State Administrative Council and the State Council, was adopted. In 1949-1956, by means of the key branches of the industry are created, nationalization of the industry and collectivization of agriculture is carried out, massive socialist construction is developed.
In 1958, at the second session of the 8th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, which took place behind closed doors, the new course which developed into a victory of the ideas of Mao Zedong and policy of Big Jump and communization.
1958-1966. And was proclaimed further as a result of fight of two lines, Cultural Revolution. 1966-1976.
Which main postulate was strengthening of class fight and process of construction of socialism and a special way of China and creation of the state and society.
Denial of a commodity-money relationship, lack of non-state forms of ownership, freezing of foreign economic relations. Public trials of the politicians declared revisionists, and the bourgeoisie remains in party, the government and army, Red Guards, etc. is proclaimed. This policy was condemned subsequently by Xiaoping, who came to the power after overthrow of Kang of Deng. The 3 Plenum of the Central Committee of PAD 11 of Convocation, December 1978, proclaimed a course on socialist market economy at a combination of 2 systems. Foreign investments, planned and distributive, and market at Massachusetts attraction, bigger economic independence of the enterprises, introduction of a family contract in the village, reduction of a share of public sector in economy, opening of free economic zones, overcoming poverty, development of science and technology. After the Chinese-Vietnamese War of 1979, the foreign policy of the country, unlike Mao's era, gradually stopped being aggressive. In the late 80s, the beginning of the 1990s, China managed to remove completely a problem of providing the population with food, to develop high growth rates of GDP and industrial production, to raise the standard of living of the people. Reforms were successfully continued also by his successors, Jiang Zemin. Since 1989, Hu Jintao. Since 2002, Xi Jinping. Since 2012. Officially, People's Republic of China, the Unitary Republic, the socialist state of democratic dictatorship of the people.
The fundamental law of the state is the Constitution adopted in 1982.
The supreme body of the government, the Unicameral National People's Congress. NP.
consisting of 2979 deputies elected by regional meetings of national representatives for a period of 5 years.
Sessions of Vienst are convened on an annual basis. Between sessions of power of the All-China meeting carries out the Vienst Standing Committee.
Only deputies from the Communist Party of China and 8 so-called democratic parties entering into the National Political Advisory Board of China
NPAPC are allowed 2 elections.
Regulatory authorities operate on the territory of the Special Administrative Regions of Hong Kong and Macau.
All deputies of Vienst are representatives of the bloc of Communists and Democrats. The head of state, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and the head of the government, the Pre-State Council Premier Li Keqiang. This is the representative already of the 5th generation of heads of the country.
Transition of powers of authority to this generation began in 2002 when Hu Jintao released Jiang Zemin from a duty of the Secretary General of the Central Committee of the CPP.
In March 2003, Hu Jintao was elected the Chinese president, and in September 2004, the chairman of the Central Council of War, chair of the Central Committee of the CPP. Earlier, all these posts were also held by Jiang Zemin. On March 8, 2005, the session of the Chinese Parliament, National People's Congress,
approved Jiang Zemin's request for resignation from a post of the chairman of the Central Military Commission of the People's Republic of China. Later, this post was also held by Hu Jintao. The completed process of change of the power in the top management of the country. The Central Military Commission of the People's Republic of China was founded in 1982.
Deng Xiaoping was its first chairman. In 1990, from this duty he was released by Jiang Zemin. Posts of Chairman of TOF's Central Committee P8 and TOFs of the People's Republic of China in the current political system of China, as a rule, are combined by one person. The Council of War and its head play an important role in the Chinese political system. So, in 1989, Deng Xiaoping, holding this post, who by this time already left the top party and state posts, made the decision on suppression of performances in Tiananmen Square. For October 2017, distribution of the highest state and party positions in the People's Republic of China looked as follows. 1. Secretary General of the Central Committee of the CPP Xi Jinping. Chairman of People's Republic of China. 2. Prime Minister of the State Council of the People's Republic of China Li Keqiang. 3. Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress Tu Li Chansh.
4. Chairman of All China Committee of the National Political Advisory Board of China Wang Yang.
5. Member of the Politburo Standing Committee Van Hunen. 6. Secretary of the Central Commission on Check of Discipline Zhao Leiji. 7. The First Deputy Prime Minister of the State Council of the People's Republic of China Han Zheng. The supreme body of executive power of the state is the State Council. The Central National Government, which part the Prime Minister, his deputies, members of the State Council, ministers, chairmen of committees, the General Auditor and the responsible Secretary are. The highest judicial authority is the Supreme National Court. Courts of First Instance and Courts of Cassation, National Courts. Public prosecutors' supervision is exercised by the Supreme National Prosecutor's Office and local bodies of National Prosecutor's Office. Local public authorities are meetings of national representatives. Local permanent bodies are standing committees. Involists aren't available. The performer administrative organs, the local national governments are local. People's Republic of China exercises administrative control over 22 provinces. At the same time, the government of the People's Republic of China considers Taiwan the 23rd province. Besides, 5 autonomous areas
where ethnic minorities of China live also enter the People's Republic of China.
4 municipal units corresponding to the cities of the Central Submission, and 2 special administrative regions. 22 provinces, 5 autonomous areas and 4 cities of the Central Submission unite the term continental China, where Hong Kong, Macau and Taiwan usually don't enter.
3-stage administrative division is de jure provided in the Constitution of the People's Republic of China.
Provinces, autonomous areas, cities of the Central Submission, counties and volists. However, de facto in continental China there are 5 levels of local government, not including Hong Kong, Macau and Taiwan. Provincial level, 34. 23 provinces, 5 autonomous areas, 4 cities of the Central Submission and 2 special administrative regions. District level, 333. 15 districts. Prefecture, 286 city districts, 30 autonomous areas, 3 AMAGs. District level, 2853. 1455 counties, 370 city counties, 117 autonomous counties, 49 Haushan, 857 areas, 3 autonomous Haushan, 4 special areas. Volist level, 46466. 19683 settlements, 13587 volists, 1085 national volists, 106 sums, 1 national sum, 71 94th Street committees and 2 areas of district submission. Rural level, villages and local communities. Residential districts. In the cities. The city is located on the northwest extremity of the North Chinese Plain and framed with a chain of mountains in the west and the north, passing then to the plain which in the southwest has descent to the Yellow Sea. The Bohai Gulf.
Moderately continental climate and distinctly expressed change of seasons are characteristic of Beijing.
Tianjin treats northern China is located along the Bohai Gulf, on the northernmost tip of the Great Chinese Channel which is connected with the Huanghe rivers and Yangtze. From the north, the south and the west Tianjin borders on the province of Hebei, on the territory of Beijing in the northwest. From the east the territory of Tianjin is washed by the Bohai Gulf.
Tianjin is connected to Beijing which is located in 96 km to the northwest by the high-speed railroad. The city is located on 31 hills, 14 men, and 121 hills, 29 men. In a front part of the delta of the Yangtze River.
In the east he is washed by the East China Sea, and in the south, Hangzhou Bay. In the west it borders on the provinces of Jiangsu and Zhejiang, and in the north on the mouth of Yangtze. Shanghai is just located in the middle of the sea coast of the country. It has convenient transport and extensive internal space, has strategic location, is large river and seaport.
The city of the central submission in the central part of China, the first in area of 4 Chinese administrative units of this category.
The population of 7.5 million people. 32.75 million people in the administrative district Chongqing. Given 2009. The main part lives out of a city area actually of Chongqing. PDD, as of 2004, is 266.5 billion yuans, or 8540 yuans per capita.
The 24 and 20 place over the country, respectively.
Hong Kong, the special administrative region of People's Republic of China, one of the leading financial centers of Asia and the world. The population -7 million people.
Macau, or Amen, the Autonomous Territory, is a part of People's Republic of China. Former Portuguese colony.
The population -541,200 people. 2009. Official languages:
Portuguese and Chinese.
The Western countries criticize foreign policy of China for support of the DDR.
The People's Republic of China pursues the foreign policy promoting strengthening of a role of China in world politics, at the same time adhering to rather neutral position.
The People's Republic of China since 1971, the permanent member of the UN Security Council. However, only in 1982 the People's Republic of China began to participate in their financing, and the first Chinese military observers were directed in 1990. In March 2003 111 Chinese peacekeepers abroad served, and in September 2011 the People's Republic of China on number of the peacekeeping contingent. 2018, Blue Helmets, including 1892 persons of military personnel. Won first place among permanent members of the UN Security Council and the 15th in the world.
Isn't recognized as 14 member states of the Union recognizing the Republic of China.
Belize, Haiti, Guatemala, Honduras, Marshall Islands, Nauru, Nicaragua, Palau, Paraguay, St. Vincent and Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Tuvalu, Eswatini and also Vatican.
From the moment of establishment of bilateral diplomatic relations between these countries, on January 1, 1979, past several decades. Throughout this period the American-Chinese relationship wasn't neither friendly nor hostile.
There is various determination of nature of this relationship. A relationship of false partnership, neither friends and nor enemies, are lying on one bed, to have different dreams. Beijing, without looking back at Washington, fulfills contractual obligations with Iran and the DDR on deliveries of arms and technologies by him, takes a hard and unambiguous line on a problem of Taiwan.
One of problems in a relationship between the states is increase in scales of the Chinese emigration in the USA.
The problem of Taiwan remains the central problem of the American-Chinese relationship. It is not only about sovereignty from the People's Republic of China, but also about the world and stability in the Pacific Rim. Prairie. In general. The separate problem between the USA and China is made by a complex of questions on energy security. Since the 21st century, the main contradictions of Washington and Beijing are in the Pacific Rim.
It is connected, first of all, with the beginning of implementation of the Pacific Strategy by Barack Obama, which purpose is strengthening of the American influence in the Pacific Rim. All actions of Washington directed to achievement of such purpose and replacement of China from the region meet sharp repulse from Beijing.
So, Washington tried to play on territorial disputes between China and other countries in the South China Sea. However, to achieve special success it didn't turn out yet. Now tension in this region, which, for example, is shown in the developed race of arms of China and the USA, increases. China has the world's largest in number armed forces, is the nuclear and rocket power. In the 21st century, military expenses of China steadily grow. For example, in 2004, the defense budget of China increased by 11.6% in comparison with 2003. By estimates of experts, since 1992 China bought arms from Russia approximately for $10 billion. In 2004, nearly 50% of the Russian military export, about $2.8 billion, were the share of China. The party management maintains balance between rates of economic growth and increase in military expenses.
We don't participate in a race of arms and we don't pose a military threat of any of the countries, the Chinese Supreme Leader Hu Jintao noted during the visit to the USA in 2011. Now priorities of the Chinese military gradually move from accumulation of conventional arms to developments in the field of military and information technologies.
For 2016, the number of the Chinese People's Liberation Army (PLA) is card people. From them do 1 card people, in the fleet military service -240,000, in aircraft -395,000, in arrest of 175,000, other 150,000. Ground forces of NOB consist of 13 general armies. The Air Force of China is divided into the same 7 districts. Reduction of number of NOC is planned to be carried out first of all at the expense of not front parts and numerous research institutes. By 2020 it is planned to reduce the number of army to 2 million people. In the becoming World Navy of NOC, over 60 destroyers and frigates, 60 diesel electric and 10 nuclear submarines and 2 aircraft carriers. During defensive reform, the task of reduction of significant lag of NOC from armed forces of the leading world states is set. According to the American experts, on equipment degree modern weapon and the equipment of the People's Republic of China behind the USA on average for 15-20 years. In this regard, China implements the program for equipment of army modern precision weapons, paying priority attention to development of rocket troops and also naval forces and the Air Force. China developed fighters of the 4th generation, including a stealth fighter, and projects the 5th.
On January 11, 2011, for the first time, the prototype of the Chinese fighter of the 5th generation of J-20 rose in air. China bought the Varangian aircraft carrier, several diesel-electric submarines and also 2 destroyers of the class, modern in Ukraine, are under construction on the Russian shipyard. Some more.
At the same time, accelerated rates conduct creation of own aircraft carriers, submarines. including atomic with ballistic missiles. The destroyer is equipped with modern radar and anti-aircraft missile systems. In 2018, the aircraft carrier of the Chinese production Ki-17 entered a system. Fast reduction of lag of the People's Republic of China in the defensive sphere from neighbors in the region, Russia, Japan, South Korea, India and also Taiwan, causes concern. First of all, in Japan fighting against the People's Republic of China for political and economic influence in the region and also in Taiwan. According to the estimates of experts, the quantity of the tactical missiles placed in the southern provinces of the People's Republic of China and aimed at Taiwan is constantly increased, approaching already 1,000. Planes of the Air Force Noke outnumbers the Taiwan side, the truth, lagging behind in the majority on fighting characteristics. To 2010 Hope expects to get overwhelming advantage over the Taiwan armed forces in air and at the sea.
The expected removal by the European Union of the embargo on arms supplies in the People's Republic of China entered in 1989 after suppression of students' performances in Tiananmen Square in Beijing also can affect balance of forces in the region.
The governments of the leading European countries, including France, Germany and Italy, already agreed to cancellation of sanctions, despite disapproval of the USA.
In June 2005, scandal between the USA and Israel concerning sale of military technologies and weapons to China bypassing the direct ban of the USA-Iran high. The USA considers that these technologies can give to the People's Republic of China military advantage in front of Taiwan.
It is about deliveries from Israel to China of the pilotless Shock Harpy aircraft intended for defeat of radars of air defense systems.
In June 2005, the American Washington Times newspaper published information on the certain confidential report submitted to the head of the United States intelligence community John Negroponte, in whom it is claimed that China made a sharp breakthrough in the field of arms which significantly increased power of the Chinese army.
Among achievements of the Chinese defense industry are called development of a new cruise missile of big range, input in a system of the new fighting ships equipped with the Chinese analog of the American control system of IDIS-Fire, creation of the new Shock submarine of the class Yuan,
development of precision weapons, including new rocket of the class Air-to-Ground and rockets of the class Earth-Earth, which can be used for striking blows on fighting aircraft carrier groups of the USA. Possessing own developed production of mines, including means of remote mining and means of remote mine clearing, China is the largest exporter of anti-personnel mines in the world.
The Chinese state company Norinco successfully competes in this market with the European companies. The Chinese intelligence agencies conduct intelligence activities, including military investigation, crew of GH-Noke in the different countries, including Rarier.
The official military budget rose in 2006 14.7% and made 284 billion yuans.
$35.5 billion. In 2016, military expenses of China grew by 7.6%, having made $146 billion. In 2015, $135 billion were allocated for defense industry. Proceeding from the theory of increase in vital space of the state outside his borders on the land, in the ocean and space, in proportion to internal cumulative power. In Beijing consider that strategic borders of this space at strong powers are beyond far frontiers, and the real sphere of influence of the weak countries sometimes appears less than the national territory. Due to the available conditions, the People's Republic of China, it is necessary to show the maximum restraint and discretion, to behave imperceptibly and not to enter direct opposition with opponents because of little significant contradictions, finally to come to the planned purpose. The main rate at expansion of vital space becomes on economic and demographic expansion. However, the Chinese leaders understand that at a certain stage this process will demand power providing. In China there live several dozens of the people from which it is recognized 56, everyone with the customs, national suits and in many cases with own language. However, at all their variety and richness of cultural traditions, these people make only about 7% of the population of the country, which body is formed by the Chinese calling themselves. Modernization of society and international marriages inevitably lead to deleting of differences between ethnic groups, but, nevertheless, many of them are proud of the heritage and remain faithful to customs and beliefs. Beautiful ceremonies and holidays attract foreign guests. In November 2000, China conducted the 5th All-China Population Census. According to a census, in China there were 1,137,386,112 Chinese. Vast majority of the population. Annual increase in population was 0.58% in 2005.
As the 6th All-China Population Census in 2010 showed, the total number of the population in a continental part of the country was 1,339,724,852 persons, and the biggest is in the world.
To delay growth of the population, in 1979 China passed a legislative policy of restriction of birth rate.
In spite of the fact that natural increase of the population in China already decreased to the average level, it because of huge initial figure considerably increases still from year to year. During the period from 1990 to 2000, the population on average annually increased almost by 12 million people. At the population and nearly 1 billion people of the CPPI was very anxious with increase in population in the People's Republic of China, and I carried out strict policy of planning of family.
Her results are quite contradictory.
The policy of the government is directed to stabilization of increase in population and is carried out under the slogan, "One family, one child."
However, in this question flexible approach taking into account local conditions is applied. Standard regulation was given to the discretion of the provincial authorities, which acquired the right to establish in local provisions of ease. It was usually possible to have the second child if parents belong to ethnic minorities or they have no brothers and sisters, and for families in rural areas if the first child the girl or has physical deviations. About as far as standard regulation of policy of restriction of birth rate depending on the province of the People's Republic of China differed, the following examples show. The situation providing such restrictions for Han works in the province of Xinjiang since 2002. 1 child for city family and 2 children for the family occupied with agriculture. For families of Xinjiang where at least one of parents belongs to ethnic minority, situation allowed to have 2 children in the city and 3 in rural areas. Thinner restrictions of the right for the second child for ethnic minorities meet. For example, in the province of Heilongjiang after 2001 there was a provision on the population and restriction of birth rate, which provides that the second child at Nanase, Oricon, Kurjais, Evangsantor can be given birth only in 4 years after the first. But even if any of these conditions isn't satisfied, it is possible just to pay a large penalty to the state for each additional child. Many wealthy families arrive quite so and have 2 and more children. In recent years, the policy of restriction of birth rate was softened.
The resolution of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of December 28, 2013 allowed to bring 2 children if at least one of parents was the only child in family. Later the ban was withdrawn completely, but the policy of restriction of birth rate remained in spite of the fact that the government considers the decision on full cancellation of all restrictions for a number of children and families since 2018.
The policy pursued by the state resists, especially in rural areas, because of the need for labor and traditional preference to boys, who can become successors over time. Families which break policy often lie during the census.
The official government policy opposes sterilization or abortions, but in practice local authorities practice such way of restriction of birth rate as they face heavy fines in case of a failure of attempt to bridle increase in population.
In general, life expectancy at female population is more than at men's. Now the assumed average life expectancy among the Chinese population -71 years. For healthcare, environmental pollution by the Chinese industry is a big problem. Near large enterprises and the polluted reservoirs there are so-called cancer villages. The share of urban population in 2011 for the first time exceeded 50% and made 51.27%. A considerable part of the population lives not in the place of a constant registration. Generally it is the peasants who arrived on earnings to the cities. According to a census of 2010, such was 261 million people, 19.6% of the population of the country, from which 175 million had registration in the province of Constance and 86 million beyond her limits. The urbanization is constrained by the system of an obligatory registration, Hukou, existing from 1950 years. One person can be registered only in one settlement.
Nevertheless, the number of the citizens living without registration constantly grows. On a census of 2000, they were 144.4 million people,
10.8% of the population of Aki. Moreover, violations of the Hukou system have long-term character. On a census of 2010-21, 6 million citizens of the People's Republic of China lived not in the place of a constant registration more than 5 years. The urban saturation is still quite low, and in the village there is a lot of excess labor.
In the 90s, the 20th century, the percent of urban population annually grew in China on average for 0.91%.
As it is supposed, these rates will remain also at the beginning of the 21st century.
According to forecasts of the Union, the population of the Chinese cities will increase by 2030 up to 884 million. In other words, it will make 59.1% of all population of the country and in general will reach the average world level by then.
The most attractive is the southern province of Guangdong, according to a census of 2010, the greatest number of the citizens having a registration in other provinces of the People's Republic of China. More than 21 million people lives in it. She is followed by Zhejiang. About 12 million people. Shanghai. About 9 million people. Jiangsu. More than 7 million people. Beijing. About 7 million people. Fujian. More than 4 million people. Tianjin. About 3 million people. The province of Heilongjiang, boundary with Russia, is unattractive for migrants from other regions. The number in the region is insignificant and has negative balance of migration. The policy of planning of family left a mark on family life. The law on marriage, which established high age of consent, 22 years for men, 20 years for women, came on January 1, 1981 into force. Marrying till 2003 had to have obligatory medical examination. It is nowadays free and voluntary at the psychiatrist, the narcologist, the dermatologist and the physiatrician. The polygamy is strictly forbidden, and since 2001 cohabitation of one of spouses with the person of an opposite sex is also forbidden. In 8 of 10 cases parents of present Chinese married at the choice and approval of the labor unions. Today the young Chinese living in the cities early gain sexual experience. The actual marriage is widespread, though since 2001 the law demands that marriage is surely registered. Illegitimate children are equated to given rise in marriage. In 2001 in the country the concept of the marriage contract is entered and the list of the income and property carried to in common acquired is accurately registered. Change of several partners before marriage. Stains are a common practice.
It is considered what the policy one family, one child, which creates a problem of the spoiled children and unauthoritative source negatively affects family traditions.
Since January 1, 2016 the law on the right to have 2 children in family, while many Chinese families refuse to have 2 children, entered. In process of growth of salaries, quality and the standard of living in China becomes more increasing a problem than immigration to the country of people from other poorer countries of Asia and Europe. Thailand, Russia, Ukraine, Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, India, Indonesia, etc. In the next years the danger of the increasing immigration of the population, for the economic reasons, from the countries of Southeast Asia, Central Asia and Eastern Europe will grow in China.
In December 2001 the Academy of Social Sciences of China published the report on studying of social groups of modern China.
The number comes down to 10.
It is a layer of the persons governing the state and society: managers, business owners, special and technicians, clerks, individual industrialists and dealers, service staff of trade, industrial workers, toilers of agriculture, and also persons without certain occupations, jobless and semi-employed.
Differentiation in respect of social groups of China goes in the area of a profession more and more that sometimes leads to social explosions. Enter the list of layers. Public heads and public servants on senior positions. Administrative workers who have certain powers, but at the same time submit to higher bodies and heads. Business owners who are engaged in a certain activity for production and further distribution of goods and services. Experts and technicians which is engaged in information technologies and close to this field of activity.
Office employees.
Office workers, so-called callers. Individual industrialists and dealers who make goods and services for own production and for sale to more general population. Workers of trade and service. Cashiers, sellers, waiters and other. Production workers in the production sphere. Workers of agriculture. Peasants who make nearly 90% of all population. Unoccupied, jobless or semi-employed citizens who live in villages and the cities. And have an own spoken and written language, Chinese, which use both in the country and beyond her limits. Total number speaking it exceeds 1 billion people. Most of 55 ethnic minorities of China also have own languages. Before release of the country, besides nationalities be fucking shocked. Dunjina. Manchurians and which used, generally Chinese, Mongols, Tibetans, Uyghurs, Koreans, Kazakhs, spoke and wrote in the national language, Melt Uzbeks, Kyrgyz, Tatars and Russians. The writings existed and at the people piss, meo, a fox, to a lac, but widely they weren't used. Other 34 ethnic groups of the writings had no. After formation of the People's Republic of China within the government program, written languages for 10 ethnic groups were created and systematized, including Zhuang, Buiz, Miao, Tun, Bikon, Weather, etc.
Reform of writing of Uyghurs, Kazakhs is undertaken to a lack in melt.
According to linguistic classification, 29 languages belong to the Chinese Tibetan family, 17 to Altai, 3 to Austroasiatic and 2 to Indo-European family. The language extended on Taiwan belongs to the Indonesian language family. Many languages of China are badly learned and their genetic accessory is unambiguously not defined. The Chinese writing, hieroglyphics, goes back to conjectural bones of the Shang dynasty. 16-11 centuries BB. With the cutout stylized images of objects, the symbols replacing words and used for predictions. Despite changes in materials for the letter, the Chinese hieroglyphs remained almost same what were in the ancient time. For reading the newspaper it is necessary to know not less than 30,000 hieroglyphs, and the educated person knows more than 50,000 hieroglyphs.
Since 1913 as an official spoken language in China serves the dialect of Apatanko.
Tangerine.
However, there are at least 7 regional dialects of Chinese which strongly differ on pronunciation. Therefore, in a conversation, inhabitants of various parts of China don't understand each other.
The uniform hieroglyphic system of the letter unites them. The Chinese hieroglyphs can consist of pictographic, ideographic and phonetic elements. The hieroglyph may support one or several radicals, or keys, and also additional lines. Keys can be both phonetic elements and semantic. For example, in a hieroglyph,
designating an interrogative particle of the general question, a hieroglyph
horse is 2 phonetics. Also in a hieroglyph designating well and said as how, the radical woman, it is combined with other semantic sun element. The idea of a hieroglyph, thus, is that woman and child and family it is good, fortunately. Since recent time Chinese passed to the simplified hieroglyphs that considerably facilitated training in Chinese. People's Republic of China is the secular state. At the same time, in the years of the Cultural Revolution, the religion in China was forbidden. Traditionally in the Chinese religion and philosophy, Confucianism, Taoism and the Buddhism are weaved. They safely coexist, and often within one temple. Confucianism, the first defined influence in China, in fact, became the code of subordination of the individual to society and its responsibility to him. The Taoism develops the ideas of personal improvement and a unification with the nature. It opposes to the Confucian doctrine about predefinition of social roles the concept of relativity.
The Buddhism introduced to China from the outside and concentrated on development of the spiritual beginning acts as an alternative to the Chinese pragmatism.
Only 18.2% of the population of China profess the Buddhism. China, the country with various religious cults.
Be fucking shocked, Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Tatars, Uzbeks, Tajiks, the Dunsena, Salara and also Uyghur practice Islam, while religion of Tibetans, Mongols, the Buddhism, at some representatives is Mio and the Christianity, and is widespread among the majority of Dor, Oricon and Evenks, shamanism.
Some Chinese Han
are adherents of Christianity or Buddhism, but most of believers practice traditional Chinese religion Taoism.
The Mahayana Buddhism, promising disposal of sufferings to all, someone Strasm to find, is widespread in China. Clarified, or Bodhisattva, remain in this world to help to reach an enlightenment another.
The acts and devotion believers deserve communication with the Bodhisattva, which are bringing closer them to Nirvana.
Islam is widespread in China among Huiets, Salar, Tunsian, Bayaniets, Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, Tatars and Tajiks. The number of Muslims by different estimates is from 19.5 to 29 million people. The supreme body of Muslims in China is the Chinese Islamic Association.
As a result of revolution and civil war, about 100,000-200,000 White Russians settled in Harbin and in Shanghai.
However, because of the difficult historical fate and a position of the modern Chinese authorities, activity of structures of Russian Orthodox Church is almost frozen. The religious legislation of the People's Republic of China doesn't allow to make it official church services. It is only possible to pray in houses of parishioners. Officially in China, one Orthodox parish works. Communications of the Holy See with China go back to the 13th century. Now in China the number of Catholics is estimated in several million. The exact figure is unknown. In 1951 the communistic country leaders forbade the Chinese Catholics to have any communications with Vatican. However, at the end of the beginning of the 21st century, situation began to change gradually. The authorities of China, as a rule, take now desires of Vatican when appoint Catholic priests to important posts into account. Nevertheless, this practice sometimes is still broken. Since 2000, the Chinese cities increased on average by 10% a year. Now in the People's Republic of China there are more than 100 cities with the population over 1 million inhabitants.
Merge of a number of the multi-million cities in the southern China. Creation of the world's largest city with the 40 million population is planned. Leading city centers of People's Republic of China: Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen. The economy of the People's Republic of China for 2018 wins first place in the world on DDD calculated at par purchasing power. Since 2014 DDD on PPS People's Republic of China overtook DDD on PPS of the USA.
At the same time, the share and volume by the end of the year made 16.48% and $17.632 trillion at China Mining 16.28% and $17.416 trillion at Shaw.
According to the Constitution, the People's Republic of China is the socialist state, but gradual decrease in a share of DDD created at the state enterprises is characteristic of the country.
From 55% in 1998 up to 41% in 2008 and 30% in 2011. According to the amendments to the Constitution adopted in 2004, the private property is inviolable. Officially, the People's Republic of China calls the present economic system construction of socialism with the Chinese specifics. Estimates of certain economists about economy forms in China strongly differ. 40-hour working week was entered only in 1995 in a public sector, and annual vacations from 5 to 15 days depending on an experience were determined only in 2007. These labor guarantees aren't extended, as of the beginning of the 2010 years, to peasants and private enterprises. Since 1980 China is included into the World Bank Group. Since 1980 Chinese economy grows on average for 15% a year.
By the end of the 1990th years rates of economic growth slowed down up to 8% per annum, but with the entry of the People's Republic of China into the World Trade Organization in 2001 inflow of direct foreign investments and expansion of export led to new acceleration.
According to official figures, in 2003 DDD of China grew by 10%, but according to experts, in fact gain of DDD could reach 10-12%. Growth of volume of foreign trade in 2005 was 23%. For 2005 80% of the Chinese foreign investments are concentrated in Asia.
Creation of market economy is carried out in China under the direction of the Communist Party on the basis of 5-year plans.
The economy keeps the multiformity.
At a high share of foreign investments of nearly 80% of all foreign investors into economy of the People's Republic of China are the ethnic Chinese.
Living abroad.
By different estimates China had to catch up with the USA during 2015, 2021 and even to become larger than the USA 3 times by 2040.
There were also skeptics believing that it doesn't happen.
China at the beginning of the 21st century is World War I by the industrial superstate on industrial outputs and also the spacefaring and nuclear power.
China is in the lead in the world on many positions of mining. Coal, iron, manganese, zinc lead, antimonial and tungsten ores and also wood. And in considerable scales extracts other minerals. Oil, gas, ores of rare earth metals, uranium. China is the world's largest producer of absolute majority of types of industrial output. The People's Republic of China is the largest global car maker who is annually releasing cars. It is more than the former leaders, the USA and Japan combined. Production of the cement going generally for own construction in China exceeds the USA by 80 times. China became the world leader instead of the USA in number constructed and skyscrapers under construction. The Chinese military-industrial complex makes all types of weapon, including nuclear and thermonuclear, submarines, atomic and with ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles. China completed the aircraft carrier bought from Ukraine and put construction of several more aircraft carriers.
China consistently conducts a course of basic food self-sufficiency of the country, holding her generally at the level of higher than 90% that promotes the successful solution of problems of food security in the country, which feeds nearly 1/5 population of Earth when using less than 9% of world arable currency.
Agriculture. Not the last role in development of China was played by existence of free economic zones. Now in the People's Republic of China 4 special economic zones. Regions. Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Shantou, Xiamen, 14 zones of free. Duty-free. Trade, 53 zones of high and new technologies, including large and modern-owned Silicon Valley. More than 70 scientific and technical zones for the experts who got an education abroad, 38 zones of processing of the products focused on export work.
It is possible to give data on the region Shenzhen, which the first received the official status of the Free Economic Zone in August 1980 as an example.
Or Shenzhen, the most quickly developing zone.
In 1979-2008 average annual growth of his DDD was 31.2%.
The city is the first in China on volumes of foreign trade. Rub from 4 Chinese special economic zones. Says Shenzhen, Zhuhai and Shantou are in the province of Guangdong. Partly thanks to it, the province of Guangdong takes the leading place on continental China on production of electronic, textile, food, pharmaceutical products and is in the lead in the sphere of production of household appliances. In the province there are assembly plants of such giants as Nissan, Honda and Toyota. In the oil and petrochemical industry of the province, the Chinese corporation, Sinopec, dominates. It is possible to distinguish the Chinese corporations BBB Electronics, Shikikiek from producers of electronics. In the region production Guangzhou Pharmaceutical, GG, one of the largest pharmacy chains in China and so forth, is also located. On DDD volume calculated on purchasing power of currencies, China takes the second place in the world after Shanghai. Sharply currency reserves increased.
Coastal provinces in the east of the country are more industrialized, while the population of many internal regions of the People's Republic of China lives more poorly.
One of the poorest regions of the country is Tibet. In the second quarter 2013, DDD growth of the People's Republic of China showed 7.5%. It is one of the highest rates among other countries. In China there is no uniform minimum wage, it is installed by each province separately and also 10.06 yuans. $1.50. an hour and lining up to 24.80 yuans. $369.62 and 22 yuans. $3.28. An hour in Shanghai vary from 11.20 yuans. $166.88. In the city of Shanghai, the highest minimum wage in the People's Republic of China minus 24.80 yuans. $369.51 was established, followed Shenzhen minus 2200 yuans. $327.80 and Beijing minus 2120 yuans. $315.88 a month respectively. As of February 2019, the minimum monthly salary in Shanghai, Guangdong, Beijing, Tianjin, Jiangsu and Zhejiang exceeded 200 yuans. $298. Since April 1, 2019, the minimum wage in Shanghai for the workers occupied full-time makes 24.80 yuans. $369.51 a month, whereas for the workers occupied part-time minus 22 yuans. $3.28 in RB China. Since January 1, 2019, salary less than 500 yuans. $722.69 a month aren't assessed with income tax. Since May 1, 2019, the minimum wage in Hong Kong for the workers who aren't foreign house servants makes $8.37.50 an hour. $4.78 an hour. The minimum wage in partially recognized state of Republic of China, Taiwan, since January 1, 2019 makes N of $23100 a month and N $150 an hour, or about $736. 659.18 euros in month and $4.78, 4.28 euros an hour. The minimum and average amount of compensation in the Republic of China and Hong Kong is much higher than in the People's Republic of China. As of 2019, the number of the people living in the People's Republic of China below national poverty line makes about 16.6 million people, or about 1.7% of the population of the country. The government of the People's Republic of China set the objective to completely eradicate poverty by 2020. Due to the growing demographic crisis in China as in many other developing countries, especially in post-communist Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, etc. At fast aging of society and low birth rate, the economy of China can face the problem which is widely discussed in the Chinese state media. China can quicker grow old than his population will grow rich. That can lead to delay of growth of the standard of living in China and his rapprochements on salaries with other developed and rich housekeepers of Asia. Japan, the Republic of Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong and, at worst, to the economic stagnation similar Japanese, observed in Japan 2 decades. However, Japan is economically developed, rich country, with high salaries, and China only developing. China is the agrarian country for a long time, but from 1950th years of the last century it started large-scale industrialization. In the early 80s the agriculture share in DDD made about 32%, but then began to decrease gradually and in 2001 fell up to 15.2%.
Rural toilers whose specific weight in the total number of busy was lost from 70.5% in 1978 up to 50% contain about 365 million people now.
From 90th years of the 20th century, China wins first place in the world on production of grain crops. In 2010, 546 million tons of grain are produced.
Meat, cotton, seeds of colza, fruit, sheet tobacco.
The second on production of tea and wool. The third or fourth on production of soybeans, sugar cane and jute. However, in average per capita calculation, the volume of products is small.
In China, a big variety of land resources, however, is a lot of hilly terrains, and plains aren't enough.
Plains make 43% of all land area of the country. Acreage of China occupied as of 2010 155.7 million hectares.
The old years agriculture of Celestial Empire developed in the 1990th peculiar alternation of the periods of an intensification.
Increase in the outputs, in particular due to increase in amount of the introduced fertilizers. With the periods of extensive development when gain was provided by expansion of acreage took place. 1990-1995 time of intensive development.
Acreage of the People's Republic of China were reduced from 113.5 million hectares to 110.5 hectares, and the volume of the introduced chemical fertilizers grew from 25.9 million tons to 35.4 million tons. During this period, the marketability of agriculture by considerable expansion of the area of orchards from 5.2 million hectares to 8.1 million hectares was also increased.
1995-2000 time of delay of an intensification and increase in a role of extensive methods.
At this time, sharply acreage from 110.1 million hectares increased up to 156.3 million hectares. At the same time, the annual volume of the introduced chemical fertilizers increased to a lesser extent from 35.4 million tons to 41.5 million tons.
Also in 1995-2000 there was a sharp reduction occupied in agriculture, from 916. 8 million people to 479.6 million people. For 2000-2010 in agriculture of the People's Republic of China, number of labor 482.3 million people in 2010. The volume of the fertilizers introduced annually 42.5 million tons in 2010. Acreage of crops 155.7 million hectares in 2010. And orchards 9.0 million hectares in 2010. Practically didn't change. In China, the earth is the state and collective ownership. At the end of 1978 and first of all in the village reform began. Thanks to her the new economic system, the family contract responsibility connected with results of production quickly extended.
The share of the cooperated farms is small, only 9.8% of the country yards of the People's Republic of China by 2005.
In the country in 2010 there were 244.3 million country yards. China has a huge coastal sea strip. His shallow fish grounds occupy 1,500,000 km. Also make a quarter of all world shallow grounds. To increase activity of peasants in production of grain, in March 2004, the State Council of the People's Republic of China announced the decision to cancel an agricultural tax within the next 5 years. Bright indicator of economic growth of the country is consumption of energy carriers. So, for example, consumption of oil in China in 40 years since the beginning of the 1968 years increased more than by 25 times, having been in 2005, according to the Public Statistical Office of the People's Republic of China, 300 million tons.
According to IEA, in 2013 China consumed 13.62 million barrels a day.
And production of the People's Republic of China was 208 million tons in 2013. China imported 269 million more tons of oil in 2013. In China there is no resource base which could allow to count on increase in oil production, that it leads to gradual increase in dependence on import.
Possibly therefore in 2010 the oil share in total amount of the consumed energy decreased from 20.2% to 17.6%.
Considering the continuing economic growth, according to forecasts of the Chinese experts, by 2020 need of the country for import of oil will reach 450 million tons.
By 2025, according to forecasts, the volume of consumption of oil in the People's Republic of China will be 710 million tons per year.
The oil companies of China, such as Sinopec, look for a possibility of access to oil and gas fields outside the People's Republic of China, for example in Russia, Kazakhstan, the countries of Africa and Latin America.
Consumption of natural People's Republic of China gas in 2005 was 50 billion m.
And in 2015, 170 bkm.
According to forecasts, by 2020 consumption of gas will grow approximately to 200 billion m.
Nevertheless, the share of natural gas in consumption of energy in the People's Republic of China remains insignificant. In 2010 it increased from 1.9% up to 4.0%. China wins first place on production and electricity consumption.
In 2012, 49.85 billion U were manufactured in the People's Republic of China.
It's the electric power that makes 22% of world production. There are some of the world's largest hydroelectric power stations and also the big program of construction of the NPP. Thanks to it in 2010 the share hydro, atomic and wind power in the general consumption increased from 2.2% up to 3.7%. At the same time some regions of northern and southern China suffer from the shortage of the electric power. In 2010 in China the coal share in the consumed energy resources, from 57.1% sharply increased to 70.5%, and the share of traditional fuel fell from 18.6% to 4.2%.
Feature of the People's Republic of China is that almost all extraction of hydrocarbons in the country is controlled by three state corporations: China National Petroleum Corporation, Sinopec Group, China National Offshore Oil Corporation, which in 2013 extracted 98.7% of oil and 97.8% of natural gas of Celestial Empire. Sinopec, which extracted 64.7% of oil and 75.8% of natural gas, was distinguished from this three in 2013.
The banking system of China consists of the central bank political, that is non-commercial, Banks, the national commercial banks, joint stock banks, city commercial banks and non-bank financial institutions represented by city and rural credit cooperatives and also investment trust companies. In Chinese, yuan called basic unit of any currency, for example, the US dollar it is yuan. But in the international context this word designates yuan of the People's Republic of China, or, more rare, one of other currencies of the Chinese language states. Regions: Taiwan dollar, Hong Kong dollar and Makoski Pataka. Yuan of the People's Republic of China, basic unit of the Chinese monetary system of renminbi. Pinyin. Renminbi. Yuan. Or in literal translation, national money. The international designation of currency according to ISO 4217, CNI. One yuan is divided into 10 jiahu, in turn, are divided into 10 fenny. Then practically left the address. For example, the sum of 3.14 yuans is said as the third yuan of 1 jia 4 fen. Words jia and fen also designate decimal prefixes 10, 1 and 10, 2 respectively. In informal conversation, a designation of the price instead of the word yuan, the word qa, and instead of, is also used. Yuans are in use in the form of paper notes and coins. Besides, in a turn there are notes of both a new and old sample.
Since 1994 the Chinese authorities preserved yuan exchange rate at the level of $1/8.28 yuans. Recently, however, China was under the increasing pressure from EU countries, Japan and especially the USA, insisting on liberalization of yuan exchange rate.
According to them, yuan exchange rate is underestimated and as a result the Chinese goods get additional competitive benefit. The passive balance of the USA in trade with China was $162 billion in 2004, and in the eighth quarter 2005 increased by 40% in relation to the same last year's period. On July 21, 2005 China refused a yuan binding $2 and raised rate of national currency by 2%. Yuan exchange rate will be defined now proceeding from his relation to a dual currency basket. For, the course made 6.21 yuans for one US dollar. According to the Chinese experts, the binding to a basket of currencies will make yuan exchange rate more sensitive to a world economic environment, but at the same time won't create threat of stability of a financial system of the country. China plans to make yuan reserve currency. China UnionPay. CUP. The only national payment service provider of China. It was founded in 2002 with assistance of the Central Bank of the People's Republic of China.
The China UnionPay company unites about 300 credit institutions around the world. The payment service provider works in 177 countries and regions of the world.
As of 2019, the number of payment cards in the address in the world by the end of 2017 reached 15 billion, the greatest share. 44% belonged to UnionPay. Its total commodity turnover of China following the results of 2018 showed record results and reached figure in $4.62 trillion, that is 12.6% higher than in 2017. Goods with a mark "It is made in China" it is nowadays possible to meet worldwide. The country in the 21st century became world factory. The world's largest exporter, China takes priority on export volume over 100 types of products. In China, more than 50% of the cameras sold in the world, 30% of conditioners, 25% of washing machines, and about 20% of refrigerators are produced. Besides, according to customs statistics, China in a row is many years the first exporter of textile products, clothes, footwear, hours, bicycles, sewing machines, and other types of labor-consuming products.
The most important trade partner of the People's Republic of China in 2014 according to the Chinese customs of the EU.
Commodity turnover minus $600 billion. And the USA, $521 billion. In 2012, export of the USA to the People's Republic of China grew from $16.2 billion to $110.5 billion, and import from Celestial Empire from $100.0 billion to $425.6 billion.
The main articles of the American export to the People's Republic of China.
2012 in brackets, the cost of this group of goods in $1 billion is specified.
Soybeans,
14. Civilian airliners, engines, equipment and their parts, 8.
Cars,
5.
Copper,
4. Semiconductors, 3. The Chinese export to the States is presented by the computer equipment. In 2012, 2% of all computer equipment imported into Shaw were the share of the People's Republic of China. China also became the largest player in the markets of Europe and Russia. The volume of foreign trade by 2004 exceeded $850 billion.
In 2008-2012, China sharply increased import of crude oil
from 180.4 million tons to 273.8 million tons. Coal from 41 million tons to 289 million tons. Natural gas from 3.3 million tons to 33 million tons. Iron ore from 444 million tons to 720 million tons.
In 2002, in the People's Republic of China strategy, an exit abroad, therefore the share of direct foreign investments of China grew as announced.
In 2002, Celestial Empire directed abroad direct investments to the sum of $6.9 billion, 0.47% of universal volume. And in 2012 already $84.2 billion, 6.05% of world export of investments. Feature of the People's Republic of China is that the prevailing share of the direct investments exported by Celestial Empire is the share of the state enterprises. 70.5% of all direct investments of the country abroad in 2010. Geographically, direct investments of the People's Republic of China were distributed as follows. 2010. 65.2% were the share of the countries of Asia. Generally to Hong Kong -54. 7% of all export of investments of China. 15.3% to Latin America, 9.8% to Europe. As of the end of 2017, China had 4.77 million km of highways, including 136.5 thousand km of highways. On the last indicator, the country appeared on the first place in the world. By the end of 2018, the total length of network of high-speed highways of China reached 142,500 km, on length the world's largest system of high-speed highways, having surpassed the total length of the American interstate system of highways in 2011. 77556 km in the USA. Many of the main high-speed highways are parallel to a route of all Chinese national highways.
Extent of a railway system of China Railways was for the end of 2013 103.1 thousand km.
In 2010, gain was 4,000 km. In 1990, in the People's Republic of China, there were only 57.9 thousand km of the railroads. In 2006, the most mountain railroad in Tibet, up to 5072 m above sea level. The worth $4.2 billion. The network of the high-speed and high-speed railroads, world's largest in China, exceeding those in Japan and Europe combined, was put into operation. The People's Republic of China possesses the first and world's largest high-speed regular line of a maglev and has the number, greatest in the world, of the operating and also under construction and planned subways. About 610s. As of September 2013, the total length of such roads to the People's Republic of China was more than 10463 km. The first place in the world on length, with the maximum speed of train service of 380 km/h. Now in China, the boom of high-speed railway construction is observed.
With the assistance of the state and thanks to special measures of stimulation, it is expected that by the end of the 12th five-year plan in 2015, the total extent of a high-speed railway system will reach 18000 km.
In the technological plan, the organization of high-speed railway communication occurs at the expense of agreements on transfer of technologies from the proved foreign producers, such as Bombardier, Alstom and Kawasaki. Adopting foreign technologies, China seeks to make on the basis of their own developments.
An example is developments of trains of the Cree-380A series, on which the record for high-speed roads of China, about 500 km/h, manufactured in China and gathering speed over 380 km/h, and since 2010 being in an operation status. Also, it is reported that the new train Beijing-Shanghai will be developed by the Chinese company Shagan Rail Vehicles and is let till 2012.
Includes sea foreign trade and internal transportations, and also cargo transportation across the largest internal rivers. The water transport is concentrated on the southeast seaside and the southern areas. His share in the general goods turnover rose from 42% in 1980 up to 53% in 2001. Total length of the internal rivers of China exceeds 110,000 km, and the total length of navigable waterways -7.8 thousand km. As of the end of 2008, Sea Merchant Marine Fleet of the People's Republic of China I had 20925 vessels in the general tonnage of 44 million tons, and the inland water transport, about 230,000 vessels with the cumulative tonnage more than 50 million tons. In 1994, foreign investors were allowed to shipping. In 1998, to internal. In 2000, allowed to create completely foreign enterprises in navigation. Until the end of the 20th century, flight by plane was a Chinese sign of situation and wealth. Now the frequency of flights between the cities grows more and more. Now from Beijing to Shanghai, more than 40 flights are daily made. In China there are 980 lines of internal air transport, 130 international lines and 24 lines of regional air transportation. The air transport in the area to the east from the line Harbin Beijing Shenzhen to Kunming is most developed.
Beijing, Shanghai and Guangzhou with the adjacent area of the delta of the Zhujiang River differ in the greatest density of airlines.
135 Chinese cities have airfields of civil appointment. Beijing is nodal point in network of the international airlines. The international airlines pass through Shanghai, Guangzhou, Urumqi, distant, Kunming, Xiamen, and leave further abroad in east, western and southern directions. On them it is possible to reach Japan, North America, the Middle East, Europe, the Southern Asia, Southeast Asia and Australia.
Creation of the civil airports endured a boom in development in 1990-1995 when their number increased from 94 up to 139 units. Then stabilization followed, and in 2005 in the country there were only 135 civil airports, but in 2005-2009 their number grew to 165 units. The number of passengers of flights also considerably hesitated by years. 1990, 138.27 million, 1995, 59.68 million, 2000, 185.76 million, 2005, 192. 51 million, 2009, 230.52 million. Level of installation of telephones to China in 1991 was only 1.29%, and in 2002 he already reached 30%. By the end of January 2013, the number of subscribers of wire communication reached 280 million and is the biggest in the world.
The number of subscribers of mobile telephone communication making only 18,000 in 1990 by the end of January 2013 rose up to
12 billion, having become the highest in the world. In 2013, tourism gave 5.2% of GDP of the country. From them 4.6% of GDP, internal tourism. In this sphere and accompanying her, more than 64 million people were busy. In 2013, 98.18 million trips abroad took place.
South Korea, Thailand and Shaw
became the most popular. In 2013, the country was visited by 26.29 million foreign tourists. In 1990, only 75 million. Most of all from Russia, the USA and Philippines. Also in 2013, 97.63 million Chalavico arrivals from Hong Kong and Macau, and 5.16 million from Taiwan are recorded. In 1985, creation of travel agencies of private and collective forms of ownership was authorized. At the same time, it was authorized to private agencies to work only with internal tourists, and to firms of collective property also with the Chinese emigrants and foreign compatriots. In 2009, creation of travel companies from 100% the foreign capital. except for activities for departure of the Chinese tourists abroad. And also travel agencies, joined with Chinese is authorized. In 2012 in the People's Republic of China the foreign capital participated in 327 hotels, and still in 340, the capital from Hong Kong, Xiamen and Taiwan. It is a little if to consider that in the country the same year there were 11687 hotels of a different class of stardom, including 3328 state.
The beginning of outbound tourism is necessary in the People's Republic of China on 1983 when it was authorized to residents of Celestial Empire to visit at own expense relatives and friends in Hong Kong.
In 1990 independent trips to Singapore, Malaysia and Thailand, and in 1997 to Australia and New Zealand were resolved. In 2002 trips to 22 countries, in 2005 already to 66 states, in 2013 to 114 states and territories were allowed Chinese. In 2008 trips were allowed the Chinese citizens in Shaw. Long time of a trip were abroad carried out only by groups, only in 2003 individual rounds. Only to Hong Kong and Macau were allowed. Since 2007 it was authorized, but only as a part of tourist groups, to visit Taiwan, and only for 2012 the island was visited by 2.42 million people from Macau. According to the statistics of World Tourism Organization of the Union. And 2. On the international tourist traffic in 2017, China from 60.7 million visitors I took the 4th place after the USA, Spain and France. The culture of China, one of the most ancient and original in the world, she had a great influence on cultural development of the numerous next people inhabiting extensive territories of the latest Mongolia, Tibet, Indochina, Korea and Japan. The calligraphy brought the usual Chinese letter to the level of an art form of art and is traditionally equated to painting and poetry as a self-expression method. As hieroglyphic images are limited to a small amount of lines. The individual style of the artist is defined by their thickness, a bend angle and the dynamism given to drawings.
Basic elements of a calligraphy which Chinese call 4 treasures of knowledge. It is ink, a stone,
Tasheknitsa, brushes and paper,
astronomy. The astronomers watching the sky in ancient China created the idea of a firmament. The Chinese constellations are mentioned in traditional Chinese culture and strongly differ from the modern constellations founded on ancient Greek astronomy.
In honor of China the asteroid 139 Ru was opened on October 10, 1874 by the Canado-American astronomer James Watson in Beijing was called. In translation from Chinese the name of an asteroid is meant by a star of happiness of China. Chinese astrology.
Every year is associated with one of 12 animals having a special symbol and making the repeating astrological cycle.
In anticipation of New Year at Chinese it is accepted to tell, for example, about arrival years of a dog.
In the Chinese astrology the features inherent in this animal are attributed to the person born under the sign of a certain animal.
Printing books, porcelain, silk, mirrors, umbrellas and kites are only a small share of those objects of our daily occurrence which were invented by Chinese and which people use to this day around the world. It is remarkable that Chinese developed the production technology of porcelain for 1,000 years to Europeans. And two most known Chinese inventions appeared thanks to philosophy. In search of an immortality elixir, Taoist alchemists accidentally removed a gunpowder formula, and the magnetic compass was created on the basis of the tool used to e.g. cloak in Feng Shui. Publishing. The invention of a mobile font had no considerable impact on the Chinese society, and most of printers continued to use former forms. In Europe, the invention of a mobile font made a revolution.
It is simpler to operate with 30 printed forms of the Latin alphabet than 300 and more for the hieroglyphs which are used at issue of the Chinese newspaper.
Performance of prints of hieroglyphs on one printing form demands much more efforts and expenses. Chinese porcelain. In spite of the fact that the ceramics in China is known since ancient times, only in a Bronze Age, 1500–400 BB, Chinese learned to receive especially strong glue and to do the furnaces for high temperature roasting, which allowed them to make stronger, sometimes glazed pottery. The real porcelain appeared only during an era Sui. Influence of the Chinese philosophy, part of East philosophy, on the cultures of China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam is equivalent to influence of ancient Greek philosophy on Europe. Are widespread. Confucianism, Taoism, Mohism, Buddhism.
Unlike the Western European literature of modern times, our texts in China took the minor place concerning literature of historiographic and ethic and philosophical orientation as a direct consequence of domination of Confucian ideology.
The lack of the most ancient layer of epic oral creativity and separation of mythological ideas is evident. It is supposed that the Confucian ideology also participated in their eradication. Traces of their existence are found in folklore of the Chinese ethnic minorities. Distinctive feature of hierarchy of the Chinese literary genres is the low provision of the drama and her rather late emergence.
Undeveloped rather European tradition were memoirs and epistolary genres, however their place was taken by the so-called genre of notes, of a bit close to the essay.
Music of China contains several millennia of the development. It was affected by musical traditions of the Middle East, Central and Southern Asia, Southeast Asia. She also absorbed elements of music of the people which were a part of the Chinese state. Uyghurs, Tibetans, Mongols, Churkcheni, Manchurians, etc. And in turn had a considerable impact on music of Korea, Japan, some people of Southeast Asia and the basin of the Pacific Ocean. The Chinese music from antiquity developed under the influence of religious and philosophical and ideological doctrines. There is an assumption that originally cinema in China was considered as a type of ancient art, a shadow play, therefore the movie in Chinese is called Electric Shadows. The first demonstration of moving pictures in China took place on August 11, 1896 in Shanghai, the city which for many years became the center of cinema of China. The first film company in China, Asia the Movie. China Cinema Company, aka Asia Film. It was founded in 1909. After formation of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the new authorities began to pay to cinema special attention. And since 1951 all Chinese movies and also cinema products of Hollywood and Hong Kong were forbidden.
At the same time, strengthening of ideological control after the announcement by Mao Zedong of a course towards fight against the right elements considerably weakened the art value of the Chinese movies.
During the Cultural Revolution, film production underwent serious restrictions. Practically all films shot earlier were forbidden, some directors underwent repressions. The middle of the 1980th is noted by appearance of the so-called fifth generation of the Chinese film directors. The first after the Cultural Revolution, release of the Beijing Film Academy. The film directors of the People's Republic of China who moved forward in the 1990th are called by the sixth generation of the Chinese cinema.
Still they are called sometimes by generation of the comeback film enthusiasts, as the lack of large budgetary financing or other forms of support led to the fact that low-budget films, often with use of the cheapest means, were quickly shot. After reunion of Hong Kong and Macau with the People's Republic of China, 1997. More and more giant movies, work on which was in common conducted by representatives of the People's Republic of China, Hong Kong and Taiwan, began to appear. The International Radio of China, the international state radio station of China which is based in Beijing, broadcasting on short and average waves (FF), FM, via the satellite and the internet. The International Radio of China broadcasts in 62 languages of the world, including Russian. CCTV Russian, the international TV channel of China Central Television. CCT, broadcasting in Russian.
Thanks to start of CCTV Russian TV channel, the Chinese TV and radio broadcasting for the abroad became the absolute leader in the world by quantity of foreign languages of broadcasting and the number of separate TV channels in foreign languages.
Science and technology. Main article. Science in China. Printing books, porcelain. C. The Chinese porcelain.
Silk, gunpowder, a magnetic compass, mirrors, umbrellas and kites are only a small share of those objects of our daily occurrence which were invented by Chinese and which people use to this day around the world.
See the list of the inventions made in China. Now China the leader, along with the USA, in the significant fields of science.
In 2019, China spent $526 billion the USA for research and development, that it is slightly less than spent the USA.
$658 billion. But it is more than cumulative expenses of Japan, Germany, South Korea and France. World leader in the number of patent applications. Active use of foreign brains became feature of China. The number of foreign scientists in the research centers of Celestial Empire grew from 1989 to 2009 from 5,000 to 480,000 people. All at the end of the old years in the People's Republic of China, about 1.6 million scientists worked.
In 2021, China rose to the 12th place in the Global Innovative Index, having overtaken Japan.
In the rating of scientific and technical clusters, the delta of the Pearl River surpassed Silicon Valley. The Chinese Academy of Sciences, CAS, is engaged in development of mathematics, physics, chemistry, medicine, sciences about the earth, information technologies, biotechnologies and so forth. The Chinese Academy of Engineering Sciences is engaged in mechanical engineering, metallurgy, construction, agriculture, the light and heavy industry, transport. The Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, CAS, is concentrated on economy, history, philosophy, the right, the international relationship, sociology. The Chinese Academy of Space Technologies is the main center of development and production of spacecrafts in the country. Space Program of China.
Having versatile astronautics, since 2003 China became the world's third space superstate, conducting the piloted flights independently. Since 1990 the People's Republic of China began commercial starts, and in 1990-2012 the Chinese carrier rockets put to orbit of 43 foreign satellites.
Since 2010, conceding only to Russia, China annually makes more space starts than the USA. As of July 2012, the People's Republic of China took the third place in the world, after the USA and Russia, on number of the functioning artificial Earth satellites. 96, including 87, are put to orbit by the Chinese carrier rockets. In 2021, the People's Republic of China started own space station. In 1916 in China there was the whole network of educational institutions, including 11 universities and 72 foreign schools, of them of 66 Russians, in Harbin and enclaves. By the time of declaration of the People's Republic of China, the network of the higher schools sharply increased. In 1949 in the country there were about 200 universities and colleges. However, the illiteracy was 90%. In the early 50s private education was liquidated, and the level of literacy increased by 1956 up to 22%. During Big Jump and Cultural Revolution, most of the universities was closed. In 1978 entered the 10-year general education. 5 years initial and 5 years an average. And also the unified state examination for entering higher education institutions. In 1986 the law on compulsory education, which exempted students of the first 9 classes from a payment for study, but not from other expenses, is adopted. On textbooks, administrative and others. In 2001 it was announced the beginning of the closings and mergers of schools program, therefore the number of elementary schools, including the educational points educating only 1-4 classes,
was reduced in 2001-2012 from 491. 27,000 to 228.58 thousand, and the number of pupils in them decreased from 125.43 million to 96.95 million.
Integration concerned as high schools of the first step. The number decreased. And the second step of secondary education. The number of schools of this level decreased.
Since 2006 children from the needing families acquired the right for exemption from a payment for textbooks and other contributions and to a grant for payment of the hostel.
In 2008 in China in general free general and compulsory 9-year education was entered. In 2009 expenses for education made 12.0% of the budget of the country.
In 2011 the share of the state allocations in the general financing of education increased from 66.5% up to 77.8%. Especially sharp jump of this indicator took place in 2005-2011 when it increased from 61.3% up to 77.8%. In 2011, grants of 78.7 million pupils were allocated for the total amount of 98.6 billion yuan.
70% from the total amount of grants were provided from the state budget.
Higher education institutions of China are considered as one of the best in Asia.
The diplomas issued by many of them are highly appreciated in Europe and America. The Chinese leaders do a lot of things for development of the national higher school. Today the most part of the Chinese higher education institutions are huge high-tech scientific complexes with libraries, the museums and modern laboratories. For lecturing in the universities often invite the best professors from around the world. In formation of the Chinese higher education, the significant role was played by involvement of foreigners. Also, the large role is played by departure of citizens for training abroad. In 2011, 1.44 million Chinese students abroad studied.
All higher education institutions of China are divided into several categories, depending on prestige and quality of training. The graduates of schools preparing for entering a university take uniform examination, which results are estimated on a 100-mark scale.
As of the beginning of the 2010 years, all students of higher education institutions of the People's Republic of China had to pay for study, and graduates weren't subject to distribution. Only those someone signed a labor contract for work, after release couldn't choose independently the place of work. The government supports the private educational organizations. The first law on encouragement of private education came into force in September 1, 2003. For the end of 2004, there were more than 70,000 private schools of different types and level, with the general contingent of 14.16 million pupils, including 1279 private higher educational institutions with the general contingent 1.81 million students. Private education occupies more than a half of all educational sector of China. China has one of the oldest sports cultures in the world. There are certificates that in China in ancient times played a certain game with a leather ball, like modern soccer. Now physical training is widespread in the Chinese culture. Besides soccer, the most popular sports meets in the country are the table tennis, artistic gymnastics and trampolining, track and field athletics, badminton, swimming, figure skating, weightlifting, short track, bullet firing, speed skating, basketball, billiards, weights, martial and military arts.
The largest publisher of sports literature in the country of China, Sports Publications Corporation, publishes a set of sports books, newspapers and magazines.
Since 2004 on the International Autodrome of Shanghai, the race, Grand Prix of China in the class, Formula 1, is held. Instead of the USA, the People's Republic of China became the new world sports power, almost as equals with the USA for medals at the Olympic Games and the World Cups in a number of sports. The past with the greatest scope, Summer Olympic Games of 2008 were held also in China in Beijing. The People's Republic of China at them won a convincing victory in an informal all-team competition. Chinese cuisine has ancient history and rich traditions. In each region of the country the features. The southern Cantonese cuisine is famous for fish dishes and seafood dishes, huianski, very hot and exotic dishes.
The Beijing cuisine is known for a Peking duck and stewed meat with vegetables. Rice always had huge value for Chinese, and as the main foodstuff, and as a commercial crop.
It is considered that the tradition of cultivation of rice in the southern China arose about 10,000 years BB, though the method of the device of jellied fields demanding large-scale irrigational works reached perfection after thousands of years.
Today rice is grown up in China almost everywhere. The Chinese rice makes 35% of world products. The Great Wall was stretched on 8,851.8 km through all northern China. The construction of a wall began in the 4th centuries BB. Further construction works were continued and were completed in the 3rd century AD. Now in the western part the Great Wall keeps an initial form, an east part is strongly destroyed and in places represents only an earth shaft. The Imperial Palace, which is in the center of Beijing. It is known also as the Forbidden City, as for 500 years of his history there could live only the emperor and his family here, and court officials and all others lived behind his walls. Until 1925 the entrance was forbidden, mere mortals here. The residence of 24 Chinese emperors. It is constructed in 1406-1420. Total area is 720,000 m. And in there are 99 rooms. He is surrounded with a wall 3,400 m long and a ditch with water which is called cold water. It is entered by UNESCO in the World Heritage List of Mankind in 1987.
The mausoleum of the Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi and the Terracotta Army is in 35 km from the city of Xi'an,
province of Shaanxi. Is built in 221-210 BB for the first emperor of the United China. In the underground palace more than 400 burials, its area more than 56. 25 km are placed.
The main exhibit of a complex, the Terracotta Army, which is accidentally found by local peasants in 1974. In 3 vaulted underground camps there are in total figures about 7,400 soldiers and horses and 90 military chariots, practically all imperial army.
Xi'an is included in the list of UNESCO in 1987. Social problems. At the beginning of the 21st century, despite economic growth, China faced a number of serious economic, environmental and social problems. The gap in income between the rich and the poor increased, the difference in development of the village and city, the western and east, especially coastal areas grew, unemployment increased. According to Social Poll, October 2013, nearly 3/4 of the Chinese public consider that in the next decade the gap between the rich and the poor will increase, and only every 10th of respondents that the situation will improve and will be created the middle class. The issue of social stratification between the rich and the poor now, 2013, became the most concerning the population of China. Earlier that was the question of food prices and housing. In the rating of the Forbes magazine of 2015, the number of dollar billionaires in China is 213 people. By the number of billionaires, China is in the 2nd place in the world after Shaw.
According to official figures for 2010, the level of the registered unemployment among urban population of China was 4.1% of able-bodied population.
9.08 million people.
When determining number of the unemployed, official statistics considers only the citizens staying on the registry and going on the dole.
Aren't considered in the People's Republic of China as jobless villagers. About a half of the population of the country. They laid off employees of the state enterprises going on the dole. Men are more senior than 50 years and women are more senior than 45 years. In the People's Republic of China as of 2010, only the citizen who, working, paid a special insurance premium has the right to unemployment benefit, and the period of payment of a grant depends on duration of payment of this contribution.
Level of the registered unemployment in China in 2018 was 3.8%, that was much lower than forecasts of the authorities in 4.5%.
The authorities plan to create 11 million jobs, however last year it was succeeded to create 13.61 million new jobs in the cities, that is 100,000 more than in 2017.
Terrorism is one of the most important problems of the People's Republic of China. Terrorism in China has different roots, respectively, and the purposes of terrorist attacks different. In the past it were political goals, race for power in the country, the region, in other cases as manifestation of the international and interreligious conflicts, disagreement of regions with ethnic minorities with the policy of the center. The region in modern China from where a long time the terrorist danger proceeded, non-obedience to the Chinese authorities. There was the Tibetan Autonomous Area where opposition of Buddhists with the Communist Party has a long story. The government of Tibet in exile a long time by different methods and unsuccessfully fought for independence of Tibet. The Tibetan revolt and violent acts in relation to the Chinese immigrants from Buddhists of supporters Dalai Lama of 14 at the end led to his escape from the country to India. The terrorist danger from the restless region was finally solved after coming to the guide of the head of Communist Party Committee of the CPP of the Tibetan Autonomous Region of the Han Chen Kuai-Nui in 2011.
Which extraordinary drastic measures considerably reduced ability of local indigenous people to resist Sinification of the region. Chen Kuai-Nui, Massachusetts. Sinification of the population in way the conclusion of indigenous people in the camp for re-education were violently forced to renounce religion was a policy cornerstone, in large quantities trained in Chinese, active promotion of the Chinese communism together with learning and performance of the Chinese songs. All this in a compartment with other measures allowed to reduce terrorist danger and to calm the region.
After success of new policy in Tibet to his politician on restriction of religiousness of the power began to practice through the whole country including concerning unreliable Chinese. Caused special discontent with new policy in the country in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, in the biggest and the most western province of China where the international and interreligious conflicts became frequent and the household in fact conflicts erupted sometimes prior to the large Massachusetts conflicts.
The subsequent drastic measures of the Central Power made the region the new center of terrorism in China. Only according to official statements in 2013 in the region about 200 terrorist attacks were conducted.
In 2016 Chen Kuai-Nui was transferred from Tibet on a post of the head of Communist Party Committee of the CPP of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region.
Similar anti-terrorist measures Chen Kuai-Nui in Xinjiang on the relation to Muslims, caused a big wave of indignations worldwide, led to aggravation of an interstate relationship of the People's Republic of China with a number of the foreign Muslim countries of Turkey, and acceptance by the U.S. Congress of a number of the anti-Chinese laws and amendments. In the 20th century, China faced a number of serious environmental problems. In some areas, the earth, the soil, and the hydrosphere was poisoned. In addition, there was an excessive air pollution because of what there is a smog. So, territories in coastal areas and floodplains of the big rivers.
Yangtze, Huanghe, and Zhejiang.
10% of the area of the country, where there live about 90% of the population of the country.
Are in serious ecological condition because of long and intensive agricultural processing and industrial environmental pollution.
Periodically there are major technogenic accidents. Explosions on mines, the pyrotechnic and chemical companies. To the numerous victims. C category. Technogenic catastrophes in China. In 2015, air pollution in China became a cause of death 1.6 million people.
China and India several years in a row share the first line of rating of the states with the highest mortality because of the polluted air.
In both countries, because of the diseases provoked by air pollution, more than 1.2 million people died.
In search of the emergency solution, the Chinese authorities carry out reorientation of power of the country from coal on gas.
See Seal of Siberia. Emphasis on renewable power is placed. Also, the country endures a record boom in the electric transport industry.
About 60% of total number of the electric cars sold in the world are the share of the People's Republic of China.
According to official figures, the number of HIV-positive residents of China during the period from 2017 to 2018 grew by 14%. In total, 820,000 HIV-positive patients live in the country. Only in the quarter 2018, 40,000 new cases of infection were revealed.
Gradually growing gap in the income of citizens and villagers is characteristic of the People's Republic of China.
The income of urban population exceeded the income of villagers in 1990 by 2.2 times, in 1995 by 2.5 times, in 2003 by 3.2 times, and in 2008 by 3.3 times. Level of social and economic development considerably differs between regions. That is one of the reasons of Massachusetts' migration of the population from the northwest of the country to the provided southeast cities and provinces. For mitigation of interregional distinctions and development of the lagging behind territories, in particular national autonomies, the authorities of the People's Republic of China actively use the interbudgetary transfers from central and local, regional budgets. China, the country multinational in which, according to official figures, 56 nationalities live. The biggest in China, nationality Han, 91. 59%. Other 55 nationalities represent ethnic minorities. All their 8.41%. For example, the most numerous are Chuana, Ap, 16 million. Manchurians, Ap, 10.6 million. The Chinese Muslims Huyyets, 9.8 million. Uyghurs, 8.3 million. Tibetans, 5.4 million. Kazakhs, 1.25 million. Kyrgyz, Ap, 161,000. Russians, 156,000. Tatars, 49,000, etc. The number of representatives of ethnic minorities gradually grows. From 1990 to 2000 gain was 15.23 million people. Because there are restrictions for the number of children among Han, while for ethnic minorities of such restrictions doesn't exist. But anyway, the number of Han so prevails over all other nationalities that some experts even call China the mononational country.
The situation with human rights in the People's Republic of China is regarded by many states and the organizations for human rights as causing serious claims. Several sources, including the United States Department of State, annually publish reports on human rights in People's Republic of China.
Along with researchers of other organizations, such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, these reports documentally confirm violations in the People's Republic of China of internationally recognized norms in the field of human rights. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.